Interfering sound system. I have full battery.
Están. Mucho gusto.
Good afternoon.
Julio César Vera. ¿Qué tal?
César,
¿Cómo estás?
mucho gusto. Soy Carlos Maris Escobar.
Hola, Carlos.
He's the president of ACIPET.
How are you?
Excellent.
Welcome to ACIPET.
Thank you. We're going to try to do this where I'm putting it up in Spanish.
Okay.
I'm going to speak in English, but we're going to have a translator speak in Spanish.
Please try to speak very slowly,
I will do that.
clearly.
I will do
Because
that.
the
There are
people
some
are...
that don't even speak English, so we're going to repeat it.
Ok, correct. The people understand English, but you have to speak slowly and clearly.
Okay. And I want to make sure that they're comfortable asking a question.
Okay.
So
You can translate all the
There's
question.
someone, we're expecting someone. Hay una persona que viene de pronto a...
Ahí está.
Yo sabía también. Pues hablas tú y luego... Por eso ayudarlos. Al teacher además. Anda para el teacher. Ah, sí. La creyera, ¿no? Y después yo le dije, entonces. Así pasa.
Okay.
Drawing us out of battery. Plug yours down. Make sure it's the right one. Keep going. Here at the end, I can. What you can do is you can upgrade this. Seriously. Come sit down right here. I can give it basically the first. Making agriculture out in the buildings, automotive. Target when we first made the car, it was a 40%. We had papers we showed them. This all this is not simple. I'm hoping to be that patient that maybe the can from the solution was to reach further. You must have had this is a layman. This is extremely silent. You don't have to be interactive. They try to Hydrocarbon recovery technology. HRT stands for hydrocarbon recovery. So this talks about the science and how important it is. This is 200,000 times magnified. It's 12 nanometers to help people understand. Nanometer, billion. It's hard to picture that. So what we did is we said, millimeter giant sample. It takes 20 feet of processing. It takes 2 million of technical processing to see the science.
1 nanometer is
1 nanometer
1 nanometer
is a billion of meters. Okay, and ours is 12 nanometers. If you listen and look at you just some of it I'll be reading. And you can just I'm speaking English slowly. Some of it help. Good to see you. That's really good. This is a video. We'll play it on there. This is in Spanish.
Gordon,
Yes, sir.
thank you very much for being here. I will have to leave because I have another game, but this is the house. Those are the comments, very interesting. We look forward to have the Love to come back. Now that you have success about it, they will give you
Sounds good. Thank you,
very
sir.
much.
Well, this talks about how it reaches out to the natural pressure. When you see the cartoon, it's actually a cartoon on a product line. What this product does is little beacons energized and moving. And they go by themselves. And they have energy and they're looking to get under. That's the it's a joining pressure. Movement and motion. Use your grip mechanism. So they push into the formation and they remove the formation forward. This is under a video. This is not over. This is nuclear waste. So what happens is it's spreading, it's taking the whole droplet off, breaking it up, here's a line on the way. Again, it talks about running motion, usually defined as just a joining pressure. That's the scientific. It's going to be on the product when you translate it. So right click, and we can do it at the same time. And you can see it in Spanish. It's all Spanish. Everything's Spanish. You can read it. And then if they ask a question in Spanish, you'll tell them that it's Spanish. I'll talk in English if you read it in Spanish. That's easy. Right out. This is a test. And you can see it actually work. The unit motion goes inside and drives it. This is a nanosurfactant. That's what grounding motion. This is an old formula from another company on the part of it. They didn't have the secret we have for making a different touches the oil, it grabs the oil droplet. So you can only get around the can't go okay, so now we just do this one. The same one. Shows the oil. It shows the oil coming into the ship. Now imagine if you have 5 billion of these big. This is sludge. This is all this one burn. You can't do that. It's attached to the formation. So this is what nanoparticles. This is what nanoparticles are. I'm going to be pointing at the Spanish for talking. You see how it's breaking the roll up, taking it to the circle. Chewing it up and then breaking it out. Slowly breaking it away so it becomes. That is oil that is burned by it. This is what they call an element cell test. You take the core out of the ground, you pressurize the oil in, put it into the cell, you add the nano, and it goes inside the core and releases the oil. This was a nano survival control. You can see they all got oil on them. But even our worst product is 2 times better than that. Now they ask me, how long does it last? How long does it last? We don't know. But this is a year old, 1 year old. And it has particles still there. And so we tried to flow test it, and we were 88 to 92% flowability. With the same cells without, same pores without that. And what it's showing us is they're sitting in the rock and telling anything that comes back, keeping it in state. So, does that make sense? It doesn't tell me. Okay, optimized nanoactivate charcoal and fractured unconventional resin. You just read this. This is how we put it in. We put a pre-pad fill, 500 to 1,000 gallons. We put a freshwater spacer between the front and the front of it after. And then we push it in with the practical, which makes slick water, full of sand. It's a 12,000 gallon, it's 50 pounds. And that soak 6 to 12 hours, it will remove all the sand. Here's some proven results. Gray line represents 10 wells that we done here before we got there. They have 126 MBO. That's how much they produce gas. We put one in, I had to put a pump jack on it for days. We put didn't have to put a pump jack on it for 7 months. We're removing, no, you're fine. We're removing 88% oil. They're only making 56%.
The oil
Green ones, oil and gas.
and the green is the gas.
This is
The
10
green
wells.
gas.
This is 10 wells without nano.
Without.
This is 1 well with nano. And we got another one. This one's 54%. Under the decline curve we talked about. It's only 39. I'm not going to make that yet. This one had a, look out, 86% of them. Put a pump here, we didn't want to DC, put a pump here, 223% of it. We may have to pump them, but it's like this, it's a supplement. This was an old well, as we take the chemical in, our cooking process is the chemical push the chemical to about 60%. These are old, 30, 40 years old. This one's 28%. This one 50%. Done wells for gas, 13%. 30%. This is for the past 24 months, not 18. And now I'm showing what much that is. What's happening? I'm only 30%. So if I've done a good job explaining the technology, you can see that this is useful in all of these different ask questions. And I may talk about some specific jobs I've done that put them all of this. This is frozen. They increase production. Keep those people very well. Bigger profits. I don't have a battery plug on mine because it was messing up the sound system. Let me do this. I'll put this on here. Leave it alone a minute. Tell me, Drew, talking about that stuff. What is it? Tell me that. Should be able to move it. This. It'll let that see. It'll let me move it, and then I can point at it. And I'll worry about it. I think this is a point of view. This one. This is the same one. Said it's only okay. Going on power setting. It's okay. As long as I can see it there, it's okay. But you need to be able to see it. You can see it up there. Is that okay? You see it up there? If you want, you can sit. You can stand here with me. You're probably going to need a microphone. I don't know how loud you are. I talk a lot, so I'm pretty loud, but you may want a microphone if you're not used to public speaking.
But you have no. Oh, I told
Make sure, because you got old people that can't hear. Old people can't hear good. Thank you so much.
Hola, hola. Ahí tienes. Muy buenas noches. Muy agradecidos a nombre de ACIPED, de su asistencia y muy honrados con el acompañamiento del señor Goffrey y también de Jaime, de Oscar, que muy amablemente pues han contado con nosotros para poder organizar esta importante conferencia y sobre todo el tema que es un tema de mucha actualidad. Estábamos revisando que precisamente la semana anterior, en la declaración que hizo Ecopetrol sobre la nueva incorporación de reservas, evidentemente al poder pasar de los 5 o 4.8 años a los 7.1 años que están ahí declarando, es innegable que lo hacen a través de las técnicas, entre muchas de estas, como es el IOR. Entonces es muy pertinente lo que vamos a poder observar en esta conferencia, sobre todo enfocado desde ese punto de vista. Y le doy la palabra a Jaime, nuevamente agradeciéndole y reiterándoles siempre que en este espacio de la asociación, pues todos puedan contar para estos eventos tan importantes y significativos desde el punto de vista técnico. Gracias, Jaime.
Gracias. Bueno, muy buenas noches a todos, muy amables por su presencia. Para nosotros, como Barichén de Colombia, es un orgullo y es contarles un poquitico la variación que está teniendo Barichén de Colombia. Creo que algunos de ustedes hemos podido compartir algunos proyectos y si no, les comento, Barichén de Colombia es una compañía dedicada al tema de protección del medio ambiente. Durante estos 21 años hemos desarrollado muchos proyectos en Colombia y en Sudamérica desde el punto de vista ambiental. Sin embargo, el año pasado comenzamos a discutir sobre las posibilidades de abrir una nueva línea o de estar en una nueva línea en Colombia con uno de nuestros representados que es Barichén International. Barichén International, quien lo van a conocer es el presidente, es Mr. Gordon Winfrey. Tiene experiencia más o menos unos 35, 40 años suministrando química y desarrollando química para pozos petroleros, pozos de gas, pozos de aceite. Y desde hace 3 años comenzaron a trabajar y a desarrollar esta nueva tecnología que es lo que le vamos a presentar el día de hoy. Como lo nombraba Benjamín, pues aparte de no solamente estar en el tema de innovación, porque yo creo que es lo que hoy día va a mandar a futuro todas las tecnologías, es innovar y es poder recuperar esas reservas que tanto anhelamos o que tantas las compañías anhelan. Esta es una de las alternativas. Lo presento con mucho orgullo porque los 2 meses y medio que llevamos haciendo algunas presentaciones en algunas de las compañías en Colombia han sido de un gran interés y estamos a punto de cerrar algunas pruebas ya en firme para poder demostrar la tecnología. Lo que ustedes van a ver es totalmente comprobado, en Estados Unidos ya se está utilizando. En Asia y en algunos otros países está ya disponible esta tecnología. Siéntanse lo más cómodos, la presentación es en inglés, él no habla español, sin embargo, pues hay dos personas que nos van a colaborar con el tema de traducción de algunas preguntas. Si en algún momento siéntanse cómodos en hacer cualquier tipo de pregunta, somos lo más abiertos que podamos en entregar la información. Ya entregamos unos brochures de lo que significa lo que es nanopartículas y bueno, yo creo que esto va a ser el primer paso de muchos pasos que tenemos que dar aquí en Colombia para trabajar esta tecnología. Muchísimas gracias nuevamente por la acogida a todos ustedes y por favor, Mr. Gordon, please come out.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. We are going to show the presentation in Spanish, and I'm going to speak in English slowly, and she is going to interpret and answer questions. If you have a question in Spanish that you want to ask, please feel free to do so. My hope today is to explain the technology of nanoparticles, how they work. In the US, our primary use for it is in fracturing, but it is being used in conventional and non-conventional wells. There you go. Is your microphone on? Good with that. First, I'll start off by introducing my company. We've been in business since 1973. My father was a research chemist. I followed in his footsteps, and we've been working in the oil field industry for over 45 years. We're making products for many companies, private label, and we also make products for our own company. Nissan and I have a relationship because of a golf tournament. I met them playing golf, and they asked me what I knew, and I asked them, I'd like to know more about the particles, and are you in the oil field? And they said no, and I said, well, I want you to be. And so we began to work, and they hired Dr. David Holcomb, who is a third-generation PhD, who had been working in the oil field his whole career. Dr. David Holcomb is the main person who designed this chemistry. This picture is Yusra. She's one of the key players. She has a master's degree from University of Texas in nanoparticulates. Nissan Chemical is 130 years old. They were founded in Japan. They have been working in agricultural. They are not a part of the car company. We're not giving away cars tonight. They began working also in agricultural, pharmaceutical, coatings, electronics, and now oil and gas. Nanoparticles is about a 35-year-old technology, but we've just learned how to use it in high brine, high temperature. Give you an example, another product I'm representing, not tonight, but it's another nanoparticle. It's put in a paint, put on the bottoms of ships, 95% solid, so barnacles can't stick to it. And the ship can go 10% faster and save 10% on fuel. Most of those wearing eyeglasses tonight have nanoparticles on them to make them scratch resistant. If I have a glass of 50% solid, it looks like water with a little bit of a shine to it. Nanoparticles can be dangerous if they're dry. We do not use any dry nanoparticles. Go ahead. You want to say something?
Sí, acá estamos viendo la Nissan Chemical, el fabricante de este producto. Está enfocado a la industria química, agroquímica, farmacéutica, y bueno, ahora es líder en este mercado de productos para el tema de las nanopartículas.
Nissan Chemical is a $2 billion a year company. They have manufacturing facilities in the Middle East, Japan, Asia, and Pasadena, Texas, which is inside of Houston. They are a fabricator and manufacturer of ultrafine particles polymer functional, organic synthesis, and control optical. This is a picture of 2 of their labs.
Son unas fotografías de los laboratorios. La empresa tiene más de 2.000 millones de ventas anuales. Está en Asia, Japón, y bueno.
Okay, let's talk about oil field. Oil field has one major problem, the production decline curve. What we see is we present a new well, and in 3 to 4 months, we are optimizing at our maximum production. In Texas, in the Eagle Ford Shale, we see an 85% decline in 12 months. In many of the other areas, in Sandstone and the Barnett and the Bakken, we're seeing an 85% decline curve in 24 months. So as we began to work on this product, what would it be like if we could not have to go in and refracture and re-enter the well and get a 40% decline curve? Could we do that? And that was the goal that we targeted. Go ahead.
Acá vemos una gráfica de cuando empezamos la producción, como al inicio de los meses tenemos una producción alta, un pico, que llegamos acá en el primer, digamos que la producción inicial, pero vemos cómo empieza a declinar la línea gris, es la fase de declive, y este es el retorno posible del producto, lo que queremos llegar, como poder, la línea punteada verde es lo que queremos, digamos que aumentar esa producción.
A very well-known production engineer named Craig Cipolla wrote a paper, and the paper has many engineers concurring that only 15% of the available fracture network receives a proppant. That means that only 85% receives nothing. What if we could reach the rest of the natural and induced fracture network?
Esto salió de un estudio donde detallaron o sacaron el resultado que el 15% de la red de las fracturas disponibles reciben algún apuntalante. Entonces, esto significa que el 85% de la red de fractura natural disponible no es alcanzado por los apuntalantes tradicionales.
What you see is in a normal fracture network, this is a horizontal, and this is in the United States and some places in South America, they induce this tree stump with an acid pressurized hydrochloric acid. And then they push in the proppant with whatever product they're using. It may be a guar, it may be a gel, could be just slick water. What they're hoping is to get communication on the outside of this, maybe 2 meters, maybe 100 meters. They just don't know. That's a question they can't answer.
Los apuntalantes convencionales son demasiado grandes para penetrar en el 85% de la red de fractura natural.
So what is the solution? The solution is to reach all the way back out, further into the fracture network.
La solución es alcanzar aún más lejos dentro de las redes inducidas y naturales de fracturas para producir más petróleo y gas, que esto lo podríamos hacer con este producto de las nanopartículas, con el NanoActive.
Today we're doing that with NanoActive HRT. HRT means hydrocarbon recovery technology. It's an intervention well package.
El NanoActive HRT es un paquete de aditivos para la intervención de pozos y un método con una tecnología de recuperación de hidrocarburos de alta eficiencia, elaborado en Estados Unidos por Nissan Chemical America Corporation.
Let's talk about how big small is. This is really big. This is important because we've got to reach into microdarcy and millidarcy fractures that we've never been able to reach in before, and now we can. So let's talk about the size of a nanoparticle. A nanometer is 1 billionth of a meter. That's hard to even picture in our mind. Our particle is right at 10 nanometers. So if you look at them under a microscope of 200,000 magnification, this is what they would look like. Let's do a comparison. We have 1 millimeter grain of sand. And if we put that across in a single line on an American quarter, 24 grains of sand would cross that quarter. If we could, and we cannot, take the nanoparticle and put it across the quarter, it would take 2.4 million of these particles to go across that same line. That's the difference in the size of the particle.
Las partículas del nanoactive son tan pequeñas que penetran en la red de fractura donde ningún otro apuntalante ha podido ir. Acá vemos el comparativo de cuánto es un
Nanometer?
Es un mil Carlos, ayúdame con
Pues como pueden ver aquí, lo que quería decir Gordon es la diferencia que hay o la comparación con un grano de 1 milímetro, como lo pueden ver acá, se necesitan 24 de estos granos de 1 milímetro para atravesar una moneda del diámetro de una moneda de 25 centavos americanos. Si pudiéramos poner los nanopartículas, serían 2.4 millones de partículas las que atravesarían ese mismo espacio. Eso es para que nos demos cuenta qué tan pequeño es y qué tanto puede llegar la nanopartícula a penetrar las fracturas.
You might want to keep that a second. Let's talk for a minute. This is not a part of the PowerPoint. Well, how do we make this particle? There's several ways to make it. You can take a 1 nanometer grain of sand that they can mine in Japan, put it in an electrical bath, and grow a coating on it that has an electrical charge so that the particles are not touching but connected. Or you can take silica sand and compress it so that it's so small it's the size of a nanometer. They will not tell us exactly which option they're using. They will not patent it because they don't want anybody to know how they're making it. So someone will copy it. They want to make sure we get a good foothold in the market before they release that information.
Bueno, lo que dice básicamente es la gente de Nissan ha utilizado esta tecnología. Ellos tienen, digamos, como la fórmula y no lo van a decir. Utilizan algún tipo de metodología donde hace que las partículas entre sí estén electrificadas, pero que no se puedan juntar entre ellas. Se mantienen repeliendo durante todo el tiempo. No sabemos cómo se hace y pues obviamente nunca nos van a decir cuál es el motivo por el cual lo van a hacer. Aquí hay un video.
This is a video that shows you what it looks like underground and how it works. It's a little cartoon video. Is it loud enough? Everybody can hear it? Houston, Texas music. Okay, so what's actually happening is this product is driven by a Brownian motion diffusion mechanism. Because the particles are so small and the electrical charge that they carry, they have their own energy. They're moving. And they're making a wedge going across the surface of the formation and lifting the oil and small calcium deposits, gas pockets, and releasing them. So now this is going to be a highway instead of a blocked road. It's breaking the oil droplets up. It's attaching itself to the surface of the wall of the formation. And it stays there with an electrical pulse, not allowing anything to stick to it as it flows across it. This is part of the reason that we believe we are seeing such a better decline curve, because before, many of the formation finds and problems, biofilm, paraffin, asphaltene, would wind up attaching and sticking in here and blocking the wellbore, blocking the flow. And now we're keeping that pathway open. And I'll show you some information to prove that.
Sí, bueno, nos comentaba adicionalmente cómo era que actuaban las partículas. Básicamente lo que hacen es que entran y se adhieren a las paredes de la formación, permitiendo que todo el hidrocarburo que esté allí se suelte de la pared y pueda salir. Adicionalmente, lo que hace es que rompe las partículas para hacerlo más pequeño aún y que pueda fluir de una manera más fácil. Esto además permite la salida de parafinas y de otros elementos que están ahí en la formación, de tal manera que permite mantenerla limpia, además de eso, cada una de esas formaciones. Adicionalmente, el producto, digamos, se mantiene en el tiempo, es decir, que no es solamente hace el efecto inmediato, sino que se mantiene allí durante algún tiempo más. How much time is going to be the nano active in the
normally it would soak 6 to 12 hours. But if I'm working on a well that has a 32 gravity or lower, I may want to wait 6 days, 3 days. But I may also want to heat the nanoparticle, because when I heat it, its activity is increased 20-fold. And I'll give you some examples in a few minutes. Now, the thing I want you to notice is the Brownian motion diffusion mechanism is what makes this work. And what it does is it goes after the gas first, the oil second, and the water last. And when I show you some of our proven results, what you're going to see is a higher oil cut, a lower water cut, and a higher increase in gas. But the whole thing is not about what is in there, but it's about the pathway being open and nothing being attached. Many times they call us in to look at a formation they want us to stimulate. And we look at the original formation geology report, and it shows 100 million barrels of oil in this area. And they have produced 6 wells, and they've only gotten out 10%. And the wells have died. Well, the oil is still there. Only thing flowing now is water. But we're not going to stop the water. We're just going to increase the oil and the gas that's with the water. You want to read that?
No sé, ¿quieren? Sí. In which form is it changing the rock permeability?
It's actually improving the permeability.
Lo que está haciendo es mejorar la permeabilidad.
And you'll
Okay. He wants to know. Okay, he's asking about there is in the formation water and oil stick to the rock. how it changed the permeability to keep the water out, and become getting out the oil too.
It is not keeping the water out. The volume of water that is in the formation will flow. What is changing is we're allowing the gas that's there and the oil to flow with it. So we're decreasing the volume of water per day. But by the time the well is completely depleted, you will probably still have the same volume of water you had, but you'll have your expense of dealing with the water lowered for daily costs because you're going to have more profits each day. If you give us a few minutes, you'll see some more answers to your question. Here is a video of nanoparticles at work. Now, this is not oil field technology picture. One of the other industries that we work in is the nuclear industry, and we are actually dealing with a problem where they're drumming up liquid radioactive waste, and they couldn't put but about 10% of the drum in, and it was foaming over. And there was much exposure problems for the people. There was a whole lot of different cost problems. So they asked if we could help them. They tried some defoamers. They didn't work. Found one that did, and it was at such a high volume, it increased the volume of radioactive material. So we called Dr. Holcomb, and Dr. Holcomb had an idea that the nanoparticle might stop the bubble from coalescing. And sure enough, they would put a small amount of the nanoparticles in the bottom of the drum, and it would actually close the gap for the bubble, and they could put the waste in the drum. Because the nuclear industry has so much money, they wanted to see it, so they made the video, and we asked permission to use it so that you could actually see what it looks like. So what's actually happening is the nanoparticles are lifting the oil off the formation. They're leaving behind a thin line of membrane of the particles like an electrical comb reaching down in, and they're breaking the oil apart into small droplets so that it can come out those microdarcy and millidarcy fractures.
Pues lo que veíamos era un poco para responderla, es las partículas, después de que desprenden el hidrocarburo y lo parten en más pequeñas partes, lo que hace es que se introduce a través de ese proceso eléctrico dentro de la formación, en las paredes de la formación, para tratar de mantenerla, que no se le adhiera nada más durante el proceso.
And this is a repeat of what we talked about. It goes after the oil, the gas first, the oil second, and the water last. And some of our proven results will show it, but it's based on the Brownian motion diffusion mechanism. Being able to move in, form this wedge, disattach from the formation, open up in sandstone throats that were plugged with calcium and emulsion, breaking them down and opening up caverns of gas and oil that might have been a half a mile away that were available but were unable to communicate. Some small fractures in the network that we were never able to penetrate. Okay, here is a lab test. It's called a Heel-Shaw test. This is a test we use many times to find out what activity of product we want to use on your gravity of oil. We've learned that if it's a 48 to 50 gravity or higher, we can use a very small concentration and it works very quickly. If we're using a product to break down and remove oil that's 28 to 32, I've got to use a more concentrate. Before you start it, let me explain it right quick. I'll ask you, Nissan is very particular. If you want to take a picture, but please don't video the presentation. They get very paranoid about it. This is a nano surfactant. It's a widely used product. Let's talk a moment about nano surfactant. It is a mutual solvent coupled with a surfactant at about a 200 nanometer emulsion. It's a good product. Dr. Holcomb is actually on the patent, and he's on our main scientist. But what it does is as soon as it touches the oil, the mutual solvent grabs the oil and pulls it out of the rock, and the surfactant goes.
the product is spent, and it has no Brownian motion, and it can't drive into those microfractures. This was a widely used product 12 years ago, 10 years ago, that Dr. Holcomb was working with FracTech on. It is a nanoparticle from Nissan. But when the bottom of the price fell out of oil, that company dissolved. And when Nissan and I began to communicate, they went back to Dr. Holcomb and said, we want to make it even better. And he worked with the scientists in their lab and figured out a way to make this where you don't have to use near as many particles. And the solution that we have it in works extremely well in high brine. They have two different products, one that works up to 250 degrees and one that's been tested to 350 degrees. Right now, I've got samples of oil coming to my office from Ecopatrol. We're going to see if we can test it up to 500 degrees. We've not tested it. And they want to know if it'll work in the steam injection that they have. So we're going to start the video. What we're going to do is we're going to drop the nano in, and you're going to watch the nano get in between the glass and drive the oil out. It's a time release video. You can see in this slide, it's moving in, but it's slow. And it's not going to remove maybe 30%. We're going to get about 98% out of this one. If you look at this one, it's only releasing what the nano emulsion can touch. Each droplet is individually released and driven out. Imagine if you have 1 billion of these microfractures and now the oil that you're able to remove. Let's go ahead to the next slide. It's the same slide, but it's from the top. I want you to see the oil droplets as they form. The other way. There it is. Can you start that video? This shows you the same slides, but from the top surface. You see a little bit of oil here, but our oil is releasing individual droplets, but regathering. And some wells that I've done stimulation on, we had to use, these were sandstones in the Frio River in Texas. We had to use emulsion breaker on the well every day. And after we stimulated the well, we didn't have to use an emulsion breaker for about 3 months because the particulates were getting the oil come to the surface and reforming. Another question that you might be in your mind is, how does this affect the refinery system? One of my customers is ConocoPhillips in Sweeney, Texas. And so we went to them and we tried in their process this nanoparticular in the oil, and it actually helped the cracking of the oil so much they asked Nissan if they would come up with a product for them to use. But the truth is, there's such a small amount coming out at each time, it's really not affecting anything. We're running a silica test on the water beforehand, and they're averaging 100 to 220 ppm silica. We may see an increase of 5 to 10 parts per million when the nanoparticles have been treated. So it's very insignificant. Now here is a self-induced sludge. We find this in old wells where people have tried to stimulate the well with hydrochloric acid and different chemistry. And instead of helping, they've actually plugged up the well bore with this sludge. And so what we did is, well, can we help this? So we took some of the sludge, and you can start that video when you're ready, and we added the nanoparticulars to it in a liquid form in a diluted fashion. And what I want you to see is how it breaks apart. How it breaks apart, and look at the oil droplets begin to break apart and move to the surface. So we're using this also in reclaiming some really bad, nasty, low gravity oil that's in pits, trying to help them see how much of the oil we can actually sell at some point in time. But it gives you an idea, and this is at ambient temperature. If I take this and heat it, it does a much more effective job. Imagine the energy 10 to 100 times because I can take the product and heat it to 170 F with a hot oil truck and bullhead it back into the formation and displace it just outside the wellbore and clean that up. This is another lab test we use. This is called an Amit cell test. And this particular test is using core samples from the Silurian dolomite core taken out of Texas. It's a rock that's pretty common. We take the amount of oil and compress it into the rock, and then we place it under the Amit cell. and then we drop the nanoparticle or whatever we're testing into the top and give it 72 hours to see what happens. The one on the right is the nanosurfactant that many people have been using. These are different formulas that we used at the very beginning, trying to find that secret formula that nobody wants to know. And what we found is that even our worst formula was 2 times better than the nanosurfactant. But our best formula is 2.5 times better, releasing the oil out of that rock. So here's a slide that helps me answer the question, how long does it last? We don't know. We honestly don't know. But I can tell you that this slide was taken of a core sample taken on a nano particular job that's a year old. Murphy Oil used the particles. A year later, they wanted to know if it was still there, so we went in and pulled core samples. This is 1 micron, so it's blown up pretty big. And each one of these, you see the nanoparticles hiding in little dimples in the rock. Is it doing us any good? So what we did is we tried to test it for flow, for permeability. And we took 3 samples from offset wells, and we had about a 20 to 25% of the 3 samples of permeability and flowability through these. On these 3 we had an 88, 87, an 88, and a 92 flow. So we know it's still helping us. And it gives us more evidence of why we're seeing the 40% decline curve instead of the 85. So the key, why don't you just read this if you don't mind?
Bueno, aquí lo importante es decir que se están optimizando y que se está optimizando naturalmente en las fracturas. Lo crítico es el posicionamiento del NanoActive optimizado en reservorios no convencionales naturalmente fracturados. Hasta cierto punto todos son naturalmente fracturados. El objetivo es maximizar el contacto del NanoActive HRT con la red de fracturas del reservorio. Solamente NanoActive llega hasta donde ningún otro apuntalante ha llegado antes.
Now, what we think is important is that we know our technology, but we don't know your wells. And so we want to work with the engineers that know the wells, that have treated the wells, that have seen success and failure. And between the 2 of us, come up with a plan that will help optimize increased production. Now, how do we use the product? Okay, so what normally we do on a fracture is we'll take right behind the acid, if there is an acid, we'll put a freshwater pill spacer and we'll put 500 gallons of nanoparticles. And then we'll put a freshwater spacer and then we'll push it out with the proppant and like bullhead it in, and it'll drive further out than you can imagine. If it's a 5,000 barrel stage, 6,000 barrel stage, 500 gallons. If it's a 12,000 barrel stage, 1,000 gallons. Now, sometimes if it's a big stage, we'll split the pill. We'll put 500 at the very beginning, and we'll put 500 in the middle of the proppant. But we always put a freshwater spacer in between to sandwich it, because if we're not careful, it'll destroy any polymer that you're using, because it will take polymer out of the well. One of the things we've seen is if you're using a slick water, if we put the product in first, it's attached to the formation. So when the slick water comes out, it comes out much quicker and you get your production return much quicker. Here's a soak time. It's 6 to 12 hours on an average. In a frac, if it's 80 stages, some of them we're doing, it winds up being less time than that, sometimes more, depending on the problems. It removes paraffin, asphaltene, biofilm, polymers, any kind of damage that you've seen in the well. Another thing that we've seen, this is not a part of the PowerPoint, is we've been able to cut down on the number of stages by spacing them farther apart. So we're saving the producer money. And the reason we're able to do that is because we can put, instead of 1,000 gallons of nano, we'll put 1,200, and it reaches all the way across and communicates with the other one. A couple of companies in Texas and in the Bakken wanted to try this because we were seeing in a zipper frac, we'd have 2 wells running this way, fractured, and 1 running this way. and we only put it in the center, and we got communication on both sides of the frac. So they began to realize that we could offset some of the cost of the product and still see the increase by cutting down on the number of stages and not putting so close together, as the proppant and the gel is very expensive. I'm going to start showing you some proven results, but I want you to know that I have so many jobs I can talk about, but I can't put it in writing until it's been vetted by a company that Nissan has hired. The last company that had this product, the Frac Tech, and started using it, some of their office work sent some information out that wasn't vetted, and they wound up in a lawsuit. So Japan doesn't want any lawsuits. They want to make sure all the data is exactly perfect before it's released, and they have everything to back it up. But I can tell you that in the Bone Spur, which is in New Mexico, we went in, they had 8 wells that they had previously fracked, and they were going after gas. And they were making about 1 million cubic foot of gas a day. And they were making in about 5 to 8 barrels of condensate. We did 3 wells in that group of wells. Of the 3, the worst one was 2 million a day immediately. The next one was 2.5 million a day, and the next one was 3.2 million a day. Our condensate was from 18 to 35 barrels a day. So what we know we're doing is we're reaching further out. We're getting communication further out and getting more gas immediately. In the Bakken, some of the wells that we turned on, they were experiencing 1,300 pounds day one. With our product in the well, it was 1,800 to 2,200 pounds day one. They knew immediately they had more gas available. Okay, here's a proven result test. The gray line indicates 8 to 10 offset wells in this particular formation. This is a Wolfberry-Upton. It's between Texas and New Mexico. It kind of crosses over. It's a hodgepodge formation, fairly good permeability. It's got calcite. It's got rock. It's got sandstone. It's got a little bit of everything. So in the wells that they were producing, they had to put, may have to move that. Thank you. They had to put a pump jack on day one. We didn't have to put a pump jack on for 7 months. They weren't making any gas. We were making gas. The other thing I want to point out is we had an 88% oil cut. They had a 56% oil cut. So basically, we're getting all the oil out of the area that we're producing from. We're not leaving any behind, maybe 5%, based on speculation, of course. We saw in 501 days, 54% better production by MBO, and our decline curve is only 39%. Now, the next one is our poster child. We like to talk about it, but we don't promise it. This one had an 86% oil cut, a 56 versus the 56. It took off like a rocket. The main difference is that we put our nano in 2 different places, one at the beginning and one in the middle. So we're speculating that we had a lot of nano go out, and then we had some nano then around, and we got more communication. Or it could just be there was more oil and gas available in this well. We don't know. They put a pump jack on here at 3 months just because they wanted to. And what we saw is another spike in the production. So what we have is after 241 days, 223% better increase in production. Now, this is not the normal. This is not the standard. This is the beauty queen. This is the poster child. Do you want to say any of that in Spanish?
Es bastante difícil de contar esto, pero pues es las diferencias que hay con los pozos tratados con NanoActive, de las muestras que tuvieron allí, cómo lograron subir exponencialmente, aplicándolo en el principio o al momento de arrancar el proceso, y luego en la mitad del proceso, dando que a partir de 240 días la producción mejoró sustancialmente con los pozos tratados con NanoActive.
Now here is some older wells, 30 to 40-year-old wells. They were in a very low permeability Austin chalk. If you see, we were making about a little under 200 barrels in 80 days. So what we used is a huff and puff treatment. I'll explain that briefly. Years ago in California, they gave it this nickname because they were using steam and chemical. So they called it huff and puff to try to get the heavy oil out of the ground. Well, what we did is we used nitrogen. So we put nano nitrogen. And the reason we did this is because most of the formations were 70 feet in height, but the perforations were only 12 feet. And I knew most of the oil was going to be on the high end of it. So if you took a glass of tea or a glass of water and put sugar in the bottom of it, the best way to stir it is to blow in it with a straw and blow the sugar up. So we took the huff and puff method and blew the nitrogen in and pressurized the nanoparticles so they would not only go up, but out. We're seeing better results with this than injecting it with water in a huff and puff method. But some of the operators don't want to spend the money, so sometimes we use water to do the huff and puff. It's about $18,000 per well on a small well. And the company that we're doing the research with and working with is here in South America. It's Linde. Is that how you pronounce it? Linde. And we're working right now with Linde in Brazil. We've got 5 wells we're fixing to do in Brazil.
De pronto para comentarles un poco sobre este asunto, lo que dice Gordon es que este es el tratamiento para un pozo mayor, ya es un pozo que tiene varios años, y lo que encontraron fue que en la formación se encontraba a una altura de 75 pies y cuando se inyectaba el nano, pues no llegaba solamente hasta 12 pies y había que hacer algún efecto para que el producto subiera y alcanzara la parte superior de la formación. Lo que hacía era inyectarle aire, bueno, le inyectaban antes aire y nano. Ellos lo que hicieron fue inyectarle nitrógeno y nano, de tal manera que lo que hiciera era un efecto de burbujas para que subiera y alcanzara la parte alta de la formación. Eso generó que el pozo subiera en tan solo 80 días, que incrementara la producción y subiera la producción.
One of the things that I like about Linde is as we're working together, they're able to help us. If I give them the schematics of the well, the permeability, the history of the well, they're able to project if I can give you a 60-day return on your investment, or if it's a 90-day, or if it's not a good idea. That's one of the good reasons that we like using them. Okay, well, let's look at some results. Here's one in 80 days. We did the huff and puff and 64.89% in another 80 days. Here's another Austin chalk, very low permeability, 28% increase. Here's another one. Now this is the Buddha. This is the one that has the high permeability. It has a whole lot of different rocks and formation as a part of the formation. So it's much easier to move through this formation. We saw 103% increase in production. So we know we were able to get across more areas and open up more areas of communication and release more oil. But what about gas? These same wells, what happened with gas? So here's one sitting at 80 days. We saw a 13.93% increase. And this was the Buddha, the highest permeability. So we didn't see as much gas in this one as we thought we would. And this one, another Buddha, 1,300%. We thought this has got to be a mistake. So we ran the math 2 or 3 times and realized it's not a mistake. There must have been a blockage somewhere in the formation that we were able to break through. We don't ever promise this, but it is encouraging when you're dealing with some old wells to see what you can actually make out of these old wells. This is very interesting right now in Brazil because Petrobras is thinking about selling a whole lot of old wells. And so a lot of people are getting really interested in buying some of those wells, and Petrobras is thinking about keeping them. Okay. Why don't you just read this? Well, I tell you what, this is not correct. Not 18, but 24 months, we've done 80 wells so far. And out of the 80 wells, we've seen increased production in every single well. The increased production on the low side is 20 to 30%. I'm not going to talk about the high ones. I'm going to talk about the worst ones. We're not seeing anything less than 20, 30% increase. So if I've done a good job explaining the technology, I think you can see there are many different applications for this other than fracturing. You want to just read through those?
Sí, estas son algunas de las, digamos, de las ventajas que tiene el uso del producto. Es rejuvenecimiento de la producción de hidrocarburos, la eliminación o prevención de daños en la formación, mejora la producción, mitiga el control y controla la parafina, asfaltenos, biopelículas y sarro, elimina los bloqueos de agua, limpia y remueve todo el lodo de perforación, mejora los pozos de inyección, mejora la eficiencia del barrido con inundación de agua, limpia las tuberías y para recuperar y mantener mayores tasas de productividad de hidrocarburos. Estas serían las ventajas más importantes. Pues lo que se busca al final de esto es tener en producción, pues aumentar la producción lo más pronto posible. Eso es lo que se pretende con el producto. Además de eso, que haya una persistencia, es que se siga trabajando para un mayor flujo sin elevación artificial. Y la ganancia, pues es una producción más larga que significa mejores ingresos para el pozo.
Any questions? We'd be happy to discuss them. I'll tell you a couple of stories on some wells. There was a company called Halliburton, and they have developed a new acid frac gel. The problem with it is the man in the field has to blend it. Now, as the gel is put, it holds the sand, and as it's shoved out into the formation under pressure, it cuts new fractures through the sandstone and tries to open up some more communication. In this particular well, the well was making 9 barrels a day. They were trying to stimulate it back to 15. It fell to 1.5 barrels. So we had presented this to them. It's been a couple of years, and they asked us if we could help. So we went out and looked, and as I got to the well, some of the acid gel was still on the ground. So whoever blended it probably blended it improperly, and it never broke. Probably it never was spent or it never broke back, and the gel was plugging the formation. So basically, I wanted to get the biggest stimulation I could out of the nanos. So I took some liquid chlorine dioxide. I took 3 totes of it, and I bullheaded it back at the same pressure the frac was to try to attack the gel. And after that, I put a freshwater spacer, and we bullheaded 800 gallons of nano. The well came back at 28 barrels a day, and it's sustained at 19 barrels a day. So I believe not only did we clean up the mess, but we opened something up a little further behind it. Another well, a company in Diamondback in the Permian Basin, a fairly big company, fracking wells, using the product, bought some old wells. These old wells had 30 wells out of 80 that had horrible paraffin problems. They were having to hot oil the well every 5 days. It was plugging off the tubing. So they asked if we would stimulate the well. Well, I thought they would let us go back in the formation. Little did I know, they did not want that at all. They wanted me to clean the pipe, the tubing. So I asked for a sample of the paraffin. It had a 180-degree melt point. It was so dehydrated from hot oil treating for 2 years. So I put it on a coupon in the lab, and as I started treating it with hot nano, it looked like a pocket knife was peeling it off and curling it up. Well, I realized I didn't want big chunks of paraffin in there. So I began to look for a solvent that would soften it. And lo and behold, I found toluene worked very well. So I put 1,000 gallons of toluene in a well and circulated it for an hour. And then I took 1,000 gallons of nanoparticles, heated to 170 degrees, and circulated it in the well. It stripped the well clean. I had no idea it would last. It's been 120 days and they have not had to hot oil that well. So basically what we believe has happened is the nanoparticles have attached with their electrical current on the pipe and they're rejecting the paraffin from sticking to it. I don't know how long it'll last. It's going to be a test to see. But they've already told me that the amount of money they spent has already been paid back because the well has produced enough to pay for that and make money. So there's a lot of little jobs and little problems that we've addressed. Now, what I have found is that it's not effective in water floods that have very low gravity oil. It's a lot of and I'm talking to some companies here in Colombia, and they have some of the same type of wells. They're 1,200, 2,000 feet deep. The gravity of the oil is 9 to 12. And if you think about most of those formations, maybe 12 feet tall, and the fluid level's only 5. As I got some of the oil and began to do the heel-shaw test, I was only able to remove about 20% of the oil out of that without heating it. And so if I'm going to put it in a water flood, I can't heat it because the heat's not going to carry. But if I heated the nano, I could get about 80% of the oil out of that slide. So what we've decided to do, and we're seeing some success, we haven't done very many, is we'll go into the best wells in that field and we'll heat the nano and displace it inside that well about 3 to 4 times the volume of the casing. And most of those wells don't hold 10 barrels in the casing, some of them 6. So if it's 10, we put 40 barrels in. We let it soak for a day and then turn the well back on. And we're seeing 50% increase, but it begins to decline fairly quickly, but it still stays at about 20% above what it was. We haven't had these on maybe about 8 months, so I don't know how effective it'll be in the long run. Nissan is very cautious to allow me to use their products unless they know it's going to be successful. Because we're still new, we don't want failures. So we'd rather say no if it looks questionable. So many times if we go into a company, present, and then they ask us, okay, we want to know what you can do, we ask them to give us 5 or 6 wells, send the data into us. We ask for an NDA so that we will not disclose their information. And then we come back with a proposal, and we're only going to propose something we think we have a 75% chance of success. If it's not, we don't want to do it. Maybe 3 years from now, when we've got 5,000 wells with success, we'll try some of the tough ones. But right now, we're not trying the hard ones. And we want to stay above 32 gravity if we're doing a big job, because that's where we're seeing the best success, 32 and higher. Anybody got any questions?
You were talking about you don't know how long these particles may stick into the formation, but do you have any information about the life cycle of this material?
The life cycle of the particle? The only information we have is a year, the one I showed you, 1 year doing core samples and looking. And we are testing the waters it's coming out, and we're showing 5 to 10 ppm increase in silica. So it's slowly releasing. We haven't been able to do any volume of math on it to say it's going to last 3 years, but it looks like it'll at least last 2, 2.5, maybe be effective 2 is our projected.
Also, apparently it can be, when you increase temperature, it can be charged again somehow. Is there a way of deactivate these particles as well? There is no information about it.
There's no way to deactivate it.
Okay.
It will wear itself out. It has a very low charge, so that it doesn't create a problem. And once it attaches, it's going to stay there until it loses its charge, and then it'll come out. So it was built to last 2 years. That's the best I can tell you. A lot of it is still unknown. Saw a hand up back there. Yes, sir.
Humberto Mendoza, independent consultant. Mr. Gordon, nice presentation. I enjoyed. My question, you mentioned that, or one of the main problems that we have in unconventional is the low recovery factor. Do you think, or there is some experience using this nanoactive material together with water, nitrogen, gas, has enhanced oil recovery together, the nanomaterial with some of this fluid?
Yes, but what is the gravity of the oil and what is the formation?
No, assume one of the suppose you have an unconventional reservoir. Normally, it's very high degree API. To increase the recovery factor, because one of the main problems, as you mentioned, is the low recovery factor. Can we use this nanomaterial together with one of the fluid as a EOR process to increase the recovery factor?
We'd have to test the fluid you want to use it with to make sure it's compatible. And I'm not sure, can you interpret the word he's using there? I'm not sure I'm understanding it. What is it you're mixing? What is it you're putting in there?
No, my question is, the question is, can you use this nanomaterial together with some other fluid, like for example, nitrogen, water, gas,
Yes.
together as a displacement in the reservoir to increase the recovery factor?
Yes, yes. I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Yes, sir.
Okay.
What I can't do is I cannot put it in anything above 1% KCl.
Okay.
Okay. I cannot put it in KCl substitute.
Okay.
Okay. So I have to be careful what fluid it is that we're putting it with. If it's production water when we're re-entering it, no problem. Nitrogen, perfect. We're
Yeah, of
actually
course.
stimulating with natural gas in some
Yeah,
cases.
of course. If you are going to do something like that, you have to test in the lab before.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
For sure.
Thank you. Okay. Couple questions back there.
Buenas noches. La pregunta es, el apuntalante, una de las funciones es mantener la apertura de la fractura también, para poder sostener el área de flujo. ¿Qué efecto hace el nanomaterial para suplir esa función del propante normal? Funciona independiente de la humectabilidad de la roca, si es aceite, gas, agua, y cómo en términos del flujo de área está afectando la partícula a la porosidad. ¿Complejo? Bueno, so let me ask in English if he can. Well, I would like to know what is the advantage of the material with the normal propane that we use when we do a fracturing job, you know? Okay. That's the one question. And the other one is if it's indifferent, the kind of wettability that the reservoir has. For example, is the wettability is oil or gas or water. So it doesn't matter, or you had to add it another kind of additive to improve the wettability of the formation.
No, it's improving that. It's all relative. But first question, this is not a proppant. It has to be used in conjunction with the proppant to keep your fracture open. But it goes beyond the proppant.
I know.
Okay? So it's used in conjunction. The only way we're able to cut some proppant down is if we can shrink the number of stages and spread them out a little bit, and the communication can cross-link.
Okay.
Okay, the second question is wettability, permeability.
Okay.
It increases because think about what it's doing. It's attaching to the formation and leaving electrical impulse so that when anything comes by, it cannot stick. It's pushing it like a friction reducer.
Okay, I understand that point, but when you have a reservoir, you can find a kind of wettability in the reservoir. So that may difficult or not the mobility of the fluids. It depends on what are you using to improve the mobility of the fluids.
Okay. So try to throw out all the chemistry before. This is not a chemical. This is a mechanical.
You see.
Okay. So basically what you're doing is you're opening up all the fractures and you're leaving them open for a year to 2 years so that everything can flow through without sticking. So wettability is not nearly as critical as permeability.
Okay.
And the carrier of it is a surfactant, but has no benefit just to carry the particle.
Okay, I think. Thank you so much.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Keep in mind, it's not a chemical reaction. It's literally mechanical. Attaching and removing.
Bueno, pues sencilla. Buenas noches. Dentro de las ventajas de la nanopartícula se hablaba de limpieza de tuberías. ¿Tiene algún efecto preventivo o correctivo frente a la formación de carbonatos o scale?
You said about the capability of the product to maintain the tubing. Escape removing is a corrective or preventive with the nano to prevent this kind of thing?
Yes, as a matter of fact, there's a company called XTO in East Texas that started calling and reordering small amounts. And we asked them why. And they were pumping it down as a pill to treat the tubing coming up because it stopped corrosion and scale, because it's attaching to the metal and leaving a skin. It will remove scale. But if I'm going to treat a well for you, first thing I want to do is I want to run a water analysis to find out the tendency, if there's a scaling tendency. And then if there is, and I think your wellbore or your perforations have scale, I'd like to clean it with some light acid, 5%. Just put it down there and let it soak for an hour or two, and then push it out in a formation because most of it's spent. Because I want the nano to increase your production. I want to put it out and open up new formations, what we want to do. But it will do the cleaning. As a matter of fact, there's some studies that we did on test on disposal wells where they had plugged the formation up, and best we could tell is some of it was scale. And we put 5,000 gallons of nanoparticles in a bullhead into this disposal well that was 20,000 barrels a day for 5 years, and they were running 3,000 PSI. They needed to be down to 2,800, and we broke the pressure back to 2,100, and they were able to take more water. But we feel like looking at the history of the well, we had iron sulfides, we had bacteria, we had biofilm, and we had a tremendous amount of scale because they weren't treating the well properly. So it will remove scale. Yes, sir. I don't know how cost effective it is for a disposal well, though.
Can I use this product like can I use this product like drug producer in drug mines?
Can you use it as a drug producer?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I am cleaning pipe, a cleaning pipe in Dallas, Fort Worth, because this is actually under the homes. It already has mercaptan in it, and it has a tremendous bacterial problem, sulfate reducing bacteria, SRB. And so we're pushing this, not this HRT, but a different product, and I'm blending it with a drying agent, and I'm blending with THPS, or THPC actually, which is a biocide. But if you put the biocide in with the pig, it wasn't penetrating the black wall of the bacteria film. So we were able to break that down, pig it out. Now we're able to clean about once a year, and the city's much happier, and the pipe's going to last a lot longer. So we could use it. We'd have to make it specifically for your problem. If it's a well if it's an oil pipeline, then it would be a different product. If it's a gas pipeline, it might be a different product. Mostly gas. For gas? Yeah. We sure appreciate y'all's time this evening, and appreciate you coming out. And if you've got any questions, you got the Jaime and Carlos's email here in Columbia. and we'll be coming back and we can get email questions from you. But at the same time, if you've got a well you'd like for us to look at, we've got some data that sheets you can take, fill out the information. I would encourage you to get an NDA with Very Chem to Columbia so that you're comfortable sharing your information. And I will tell you this, that we are doing beta testing pricing. We're getting very low pricing right now. But what we ask is that you share your information with us so that we can use it in future PowerPoints. We will not tell who your company is. We will not tell the name of the well, only the formation type and what our results are. And we prefer to do wells that have other wells around it to compare to. We'd rather not go into a brand new area where nobody knows how good the well is going to be. We want you to know, hey, this product made a big difference. Thank you again.
Well, thank you, Gordon. Y pues a ustedes, digamos, ya para finalizar, contarles, Barichem de Colombia tiene 21 años trabajando en este negocio. Digamos, hemos trabajado de la mano de Barichem Internacional desde hace mucho tiempo. La idea es que ustedes tengan la posibilidad, si alguno está interesado en conocer un poco más acerca de este producto, como le decía a él, la idea es no decirles que vamos a hacer cosas que no se pueden. La idea sería que ustedes en algún momento, si están interesados, nosotros les entregamos un formato para que ustedes puedan llenar esa información. Con base en esa información nosotros lo enviamos a Nissan Chemical. Ellos revisan si ese pozo al cual ustedes quieren mirar se le puede aplicar estas nanopartículas, y de esa manera podíamos arrancar, digamos, con un proceso. Se me haría un DNA para que ustedes lo llenen y para que sepa que hay algún tipo de confidencialidad en el proceso, y de ahí en adelante sería tomar unas muestras. Ellos las llevan, básicamente lo que les estaba contando hace un momento. Ya arrancamos con algunas muestras con Ecopetrol. La idea es que ellos en el laboratorio van a hacer unas pruebas. Esas pruebas van a estar por encima de los 500 grados Fahrenheit con unas muestras que ya se enviaron. La idea también que dicen ellos es, si este proceso funciona, si esto sigue adelante y la prueba resulta positiva, la idea sería de pronto para ellos tener la posibilidad de publicar la información que resulte sin nombrar el propietario, digamos, del pozo, ni siquiera el sitio exacto donde está, sino hacer referencia simplemente de la zona donde se obtuvo los resultados de esas pruebas que se hicieron. Entonces, yo tengo aquí unos formatos. Si alguno de ustedes estaría interesado en llenar con la información a lo mejor de algún pozo que quieran ustedes revisar, con muchísimo gusto lo podrían llenar, enviárnoslo al correo electrónico de Barichem de Colombia, y nosotros hacer el proceso para que ellos nos puedan devolver esa información más adelante. No sé si alguno estaría interesado, yo con mucho gusto. Is there any limited to apply this kind of technology? There is something that they have to be aware?
Yes, there are limits. Basically, we don't see great results with low gravity oil without heat, a lot of heat. We don't know the high temperature limits. We're tested to 350. One of the problems that I've seen, particularly in sandstone, is that some of the producers, let's say the formation is 50 feet in height, and they've been producing at it. And so as it gets to about 70% of the fluid level is removed, now the condensate's falling out and it's saturating the sandstone. And now they're down at 60% and they want us to nano at 70%. So we've got to figure out a way to get fluid back in. I need the fluid. A couple of things that I didn't mention. If I had a shot glass full of nanoparticles and this room was full of water and I poured it on the floor, it would cover every one of us, the ceiling, the walls, and it would be heading out the door trying to find more area. Depending on the formation, a general rule of thumb is an 8-ounce glass will cover a South American football field. So that's how much area this product will cover. So when you put 500 gallons in a formation, it goes a long way. I'm sorry, Sid. Well, I would say every formation we've worked in has been successful, but we do not do any deep water because we have not done any testing on heavy clay only. There are problems, like there's some areas that there's some very sensitive monomorillonite clay that they have to use a 4% KCl to even move anything into the formation. And so we don't want to hurt their clay, and we don't want to put our product in 4% KCl. Now, if the formation's high enough, we can put our product in with huff and puff and nitrogen. So there are, guidelines. We can't just put it out there in everything. That's why we want to talk with the engineering group, find out what they've done, what's hurt the well, what's been successful, help them understand the technology, and then possibly we can design something that would be 75% effective. Again, if it's not, we don't want to do it right now. Thank you.
Bueno, pues quería en nombre de ACIPET, especialmente que nos han abierto las puertas. Yo sé que muchos de ustedes atendieron la invitación a través de ellos. Quisiera además de eso pues dar las gracias a Gordon por asistir y por acompañarnos en este proceso. Como les digo, la idea es que sea un proceso a largo tiempo, con lo cual pues queríamos demostrarle que es un tema serio y que nos interesa que sepan que una compañía como Barichem de Colombia está al frente del asunto, que es una compañía que tiene ya mucho tiempo de experiencia en el mercado. Esta es una nueva línea para nosotros en el sentido de que siempre hemos trabajado en el tema ambiental, pero ahora queremos, aprovechando el vínculo que tenemos con Barichem International, para fomentar el proceso en el área de producción. Entonces, pues, bienvenidos a esta nueva tecnología y pues me gustaría luego conocer información de ustedes referente a si tienen algunas otras dudas o si quieren preguntar alguna otra cosa adicional o conocer más, como les decía, acerca de algún pozo que quieran ustedes ver si esta tecnología aplica. Muchas gracias por venir.
Thank you for your question. I'm sorry I didn't understand. Very little.
Pero ya les
Very little on the heating and pumping directly into the well. Cleaning the screen. It is not 100% effective. It's about heated, about 70% based on the Hill Shaw test. So if somebody, we're doing some work right now with Echo Patrol, trying to figure out what we can do. Yeah, they have Yes, 500 F. That's what they're wanting me to test for. We'll see. We'll see.
Por supuesto, claro que sí. Una para un compañero, otra vez. ¿Por qué no hacemos una cosa? Yo junto los datos. Si quieres una tarjetita.
¿Tiene una tarjetita?
Claro que sí, le voy a funcionar con tarjetas bien.
Actually, Nissan hasn't tested on anything less than 21 to 30. I'm testing on 12 days.
Gracias. No, tranquilo. Alonso.
When I finish with some test work, what I'm doing, Petrobras, Echo Control, I will, and there's some companies fixes. I'll get back to you and tell you what we've been successful with. What I'm seeing that works is I pump directly into the well, push it out, let it sit about 6 hours, and turn it back on.
Oh, good. That's close to me. All right. Thank you. I would say you. Yes. I'm very hesitant without permission from Nissan. If there's something you want to do, you have to support it.
Pero entonces,
Actually, they have a land farm, heavy crude, that we're gonna be working on to see if they can reclaim it so they don't have to land farm it.
Del pino, muy largo. Igual, pero con guión abajo con la palabra. El del. Eso, pino. Arroba
I might let them know about it. I'll be flying home Thursday, but Jaime Herrera will be, he's in Kuwait, but he'll be back in a couple of weeks, he might stop by.
Which is the end of the year.
Thank you, sir.
¿Cómo están? Muy bien.
No, me queda para la cirugía, puedo preguntar. Porque pues cada cosa que vayamos a probar nos vamos a buscar con el ingeniero. Entonces antes de ir, estaba conectando mi mensaje. No, tranquilo, eso es. Nosotros somos los mismos, pero no somos bien. En la China nos vamos a ver a muchas cosas adicionales. Y estábamos completamente en arenero.
Bueno, sí, ya voy en contacto. Perfecto, sí, se le das. Mirar a ver qué puede hacer. Vale, con Calomares, sí, que sí, ¿es su tarjeta?
Esa es mi preocupación.
De junio.
Eso le echamos
Yo le escribo antes.
nos ponemos en contacto. Claro que sí.
Claro,
Claro, pues listo, ahora podamos.
nosotros tenemos
And let's get some information, maybe get some and an explanation of your water treatment plant. And then I'll try to get you some.
Listo, yo llego, veo otro dron, listo, me baja el corte de agua, fantástico, porque es como si estuviera mandando otro corte. Pero ¿qué pasa con el retorno del agua? Pero con esto, con esta paleta con esta información yo puedo mandar el valor del registro. ¿Un corazón? Viable para tomar es todo económicamente sobre todo que sería para todos donde nosotros estamos haciendo una producción y vamos a claro, siempre. Perfecto. Gracias. Mañana se puede.
Aquí la tenemos a la mano.
De una.
Gracias.
Yo de una. Estoy pendiente. Hasta luego.
That's what it's about, right? This is the No. Bien, señor.
Una institución que quiera aplicar esa tecnología para investigación.
Aquí está la información que debe llenar. Aquí está la información. Esto es otra cosa.